Welcome to the Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. Every week, we're going to bring you powerful stories and strategies from leaders who are making a real impact by building stronger, more resilient communities. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools to thrive in both your personal and professional life.
Hey everybody, it's Beth Almaris with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. The foundation is a small nonprofit and we are dedicated to helping individuals and organizations build strength and resilience through skill-based education and leadership development. We have a great guest today. I'm excited to introduce you to Kristie Cannady. Hey Kristie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Kristie is the COO of Dovetail Learning, and she is calling in from the other coast. So Kristie is from outside of San Francisco.
Absolutely. And a little bit about Dovetail Learning. We're also a small nonprofit, and we believe in fostering resilience in organizations as individuals as well through that skills-based approach. And we have written an approach to do so called We Are Resilient. And we work predominantly with educators and healthcare providers, really helping people hone in on how they can thrive and be their best selves.
Awesome. So tell me about that. Where do your clients come from?
Absolutely. So we fostered our relationships in a myriad of ways. What we've realized is that it really is about relationship building for you to have a strong actual presence and helping hand in any organization. So we present at conferences, and then people word of mouth. It's kind of growing. We're in the snowball moment where we partnered with one county of Office of Education, and now 5 other counties of Office of Education are partnering with us, and we really believe that there's this movement. We all know social emotional learning with children, but what about the grown-ups in the room? If you are a math teacher, you have content mastery in your subject, right? But we're asking all of our educators, sometimes our care providers, aftercare, paraprofessionals, to be teaching social emotional learning without supporting the grown-up first. And we really believe in that kind of me to we approach. So I start with myself and my own emotional regulation, and then I can then move that out to others.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I think you brought up math and just we have so many folks that have this subject matter expertise, but so much of teaching today is classroom management.
Exactly.
And those skills don't come naturally to everybody, and they're ever changing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the COVID really showed us a different side of education and really showed some of the gaps.
It really brought to light some
Yeah.
of the missing components. And unfortunately, in education and any other workplace sector, because we work with other organizations as well, we're trying to solve a problem typically without actually going to the root source of change, right? So the foundation of said problems manifest when we have these missing components of emotional intelligence and understanding how we react and see the world. And then how to others as well, so you can be in relationship. And so I think COVID really did bring to light a lot of the foundational structural issues. And that's kind of my positive reframe and thinking about how we can take that information and now try and make change for good.
Yeah. So why don't we really start with, what do you think resilience is? I think it's a word we throw around a lot, but I don't know that everyone really comes to the table with a good definition.
I really appreciate that question because we grappled with this for a long time and we decided that it needed to actually be a bigger than one word. So resilience in our definition, in our, if you come to our lexicon, is there's actually 5 different types. We have what we call reactive resilience, how we react to stress stimulus or stressors that happen in our life. And the benefit of looking at that from the lens of resilience is you can kind of remove some shame and judgment to your reactions, because sometimes our reactions do serve us and sometimes they don't serve us. So being in relationship with them allows you to have a better understanding of why you're reacting and as opposed to like judgment. Then we have our personal resilience, as most people deem the word, how I bounce back, or I don't love the term, but many people resonate with grit, getting through
Mm.
something. Doesn't resonate the most with me, but I understand why it resonates for many. Then we have relational resilience. So any relationship has its own levels of resilience that ebbs and flows. I love the example that my best friend can tell me that this shirt is ugly, and I would say thank you. And let's say a colleague of mine that I don't have a great relational resilience relationship with could say the same thing with the same positive intent, and I may not react so pleasantly. And then we have our group resilience. So any given group can actually have its own levels that's made up of all the individuals that are there, but there's actually like the whole group, how it functions and flow together. You've been a part of a group that's really jiving with one another and going really well, and we've all been a part of a group that isn't. And
Mm.
it's important to acknowledge there's ways to enhance those resilience. And then we also pull out what we call cultural resilience, where we come from, the traditions, our backgrounds. It's bigger than ethnicity and who we are in this world, but it's really celebrating where we come from and where we and how we got here, and also being able to examine maybe some unknown biases that we've inherited throughout the years and where they
Mm.
come from as well. So you can again be in relationship with that. And so we've kind of expanded the definition to a much bigger word.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and it definitely rings true. What are some of the challenges that organizations are going through when they seek out your services?
Yeah, so I would say the top two is so like for instance in education, when we have people seek out our services, there is a movement in the United States to look at adult social emotional learning. That's a push going forward, which I'm so grateful for. And a lot of times they're so focused on the child or the student in the room, they're not actually paying attention to their relationships and their collaborations between the actual educators, and taking them into account and them first is usually why people are reaching out, because they're acknowledging burnout. They're acknowledging the demands are getting too big and the resources too small for many educators. Same in healthcare providers. We launched in 2020. So we have partnership with chapters of the American Association of Pediatrics because, hello, COVID, uh, talk about the height of stress and burnout for that industry. And so a lot of it is not understanding how to get ahead of that burnout and the demand increase and resource decrease. So that way, when those challenges arise, you can acknowledge I'm off centered and you have skills to be centered and then receive those challenges better. We can't remove the stuff we can't control in the world,
Right,
but we
exactly.
can prep ourselves on how we're going to receive it.
Yeah. So, what are some of the benefits that an organization can look forward to when they start focusing on these things?
So one of the biggest pieces is not only is when because we typically work in more professional settings, we do work with some individuals, but you're professionally more centered, you're more grounded, you can receive better relationships better. One of our pieces of reactive resilience is what we call protective patterns. And we develop these because we feel vulnerable or unsafe. So when you can get in relationship with your own, again, starting with the me before we go to the we, I can understand, oh, when my protective pattern comes out, I'm feeling vulnerable and unsafe. How do I kind of tend to that as opposed to judge it? And once you get really good at acknowledging yours, now when someone else is getting reactive at you, it allows you to find that space in between and pause. It's all practice. We're all not perfect. We're human. And then have a different relationship with their reaction. A great example, my husband totally gives me permission to say this, is his kind of default state when he's feeling vulnerable or unsafe is very distrusting. I jokingly refer to it the hamster wheel of distrust. Very hard to make decisions, really hard to follow through or maybe finish a project, has to check the front door 200 times to make sure it's locked. These kind of behaviors. And early in our relationship, because I'm a very decisive person, that would irritate me. And as we developed We Are Resilient, I had this big aha. Oh, if he's checking the front door 200 times, he's feeling vulnerable. He's feeling maybe a little unsafe for whatever reason. Then that allows me to shift my narrative. So I'm not seeing that as something annoying, but something to tend to. Doesn't always work because we're human again. It's the human condition, but it allows you to get better at being in relationship with people. And I've had a lot of people say that really changed their relationship with that one person in the office that maybe was bothering or driving them crazy. And they could shift that relationship and wonder, why are they doing that? As opposed to, I'm so annoyed that they're doing that.
Mm, yes, that's, yeah. And a little empathy can go a long way, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. It is, relationships, I think it's really interesting how so many things just go back to that, right? Like
Yeah,
relationship to ourself, relationship
yes.
to our coworkers or our clients, relationship to the mission of where we're working, right?
Yeah. And if you don't have the ability to have self compassion, self empathy, really hard to authentically shift that into real empathy and compassion for others, right? As soon as you begin to, in my opinion, as soon as I could give myself grace, it was easier for me to give grace to others in a real true deep way,
Mm,
because we're all human together. If I can take judgment from my actions and reactions and sit with that authenticity of why I was feeling vulnerable, I can do so for somebody else. And then that allows you to grow from that relational resilience and then take it to the next level of in a community or a group or an organizational resilience, right? So not just that's why it's that you have to start with you. If you don't fully understand the breadth of what it means to be human, it's pretty hard to have that understanding for others.
yeah. Although I do know there are quite a few people that have all the empathy in the world for others, but don't really have it for themselves.
Mhm. I think it's easy to do that as a band-aid, but maybe not always as that full authentic piece. I know, it's always what would you say to a friend? It's supposed to what would you say to yourself, right?
Hmm.
And what we found is like really sitting with the noticing all of our skills that we provide for personal resilience, relational resilience, and group resilience starts with noticing. Because if we can get out of our judgment space and just
Hmm.
pause and notice what's happening with myself, pause and maybe notice what's happening. Oh, my husband just checked the door 500 times. I wonder what's going on with him. Or you, that person on the team who maybe is just a little bit off,
Yeah.
then that's the first step. And then to do so with curiosity and not assumptions. Like, I know why he's off, or I know why Sally from HR is having a bad day. I have no idea what's going on with Sally, right? But it can put me in a space of curiosity.
Yeah. And I think, it is that observation versus judgment. And I
Yeah.
think you have to be present, right? Like, I think that's a big challenge that everyone has these days is our attention is there's so many things grabbing for it, and our attention
Mhm.
spans have gotten shorter. And so to really be observant, you have to be present, and that can be a real struggle.
And one of the things we have folded into our approach is the practice model coach kind of framework that we built. That if you don't practice something yourself, you really can't model it for others, and you sure can't coach it. You can try, but it's that old adage, do as I say, not as I do, that we know does not work in a family setting. If I'm not emotionally regulated, do you think my 16-year-old is going to be learning the techniques for him to be emotionally regulated? Absolutely not. And yet we often, because we work with so many people who work with children, expect them to have this like gold star stamp of emotional regulations when we ourselves are not practicing or ourselves, doing the work. And if you don't practice something, you can't actually teach something. It's just like a disconnect, right? So
Yeah.
I think it goes throughout, no matter where you are in your walk of life, at home, with our loved ones, in the workplace, with our coworkers, when you're in charge of a class of sometimes 30 very rambunctious second graders. There's a lot of things that you're managing. And if you haven't practiced how to stay in a centered place, or remove the judgment when you're off centered so it's easier to get more centered, then you're really not going to be able to help others get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. So, Kristie, if folks are interested in learning more or potentially working with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way to go to our websites, we have dovetaillearning.org. And then anyone can always reach out to me directly. My email address is Kristie@dovetaillearning.org, Kristie. And we partner with people in all different ways. Our biggest kind of claim to fame is we meet people where they are. There's no one size fit all to professional development or train the trainer program or whatever they're looking for. I've had people say, I have 2 hours on Tuesday. Can you help? And we're like, yes, what's your goals? And we'll give you the best thing we can for 2 hours, right? Because everybody enters the stream in a different place.
Yeah, very much so. Well, I'm really glad that you're out there doing the good work. It's definitely needed. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing at the foundation as well.
Absolutely. And thanks to our listeners. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on our Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. We hope you've been inspired by today's stories and strategies for building stronger, more resilient communities. Remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing through every challenge to become bigger and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. Stay connected, stay resilient, and we'll see you next time.